Michelle Karén. She is an astrologer, author, and shamanism teacher who's highly regarded for her mastery in the international community, for her ability to pierce through the most challenging situations with her insight. Visit her at www.michellekarén.com. You can review her books, her travels, her essays, and her presentations. Michelle is the author of Astrology for Enlightenment. And so without much of more of a wait, let's say hello to Michelle. Hello.
Hello, Carmen. How are you doing?
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for meeting us.
Happy
How are you
New
tonight?
Year
Happy New
to
Year.
everybody. Let's co-create a year of peace, happiness, joy, love, abundance, and everything we desire this year.
I think so. And so what you are, I'd like to find out from you. For one, you have a beautiful, beautiful voice.
Thank
I
you.
must imagine that you probably use that in your work to do your meditations, your singing for your shamanism instruction, and you just have an amazing presence, a very calm energy.
Thank
You've written
you.
several books. Tell us a little bit about your background, because now I believe, is this correct, that not only inspired by Linda Goodman, as we all were, I mean, absolute
She was
staple.
amazing.
Did you study under her as well?
No, I did not, but I did read her book when I was 14, and this made me want to become an astrologer. And I mean, to this day, I still believe she's the greatest teacher I ever had, even though I never met her personally. But I believe in spirit we were extremely connected. And she was a genius in that she was able to explain very deep, esoteric, ancient wisdom, astrological wisdom, in a way that was very accessible to popular understanding. So it's at the same time her books were very poetic, very deep, very rich, very real, and at the same time very simple to understand. So, of course, when I read this when I was 14 and I told my parents I was going to be an astrologer, they're like, what is she talking about? How old is she? And but I was determined, so I started, I read all the books, because what was amazing about Linda Goodman's sun signs is that somebody who had never met me could describe me better than people who lived with me. And then I realized that whatever, people said was so wrong with me was actually just my sign, was my reality, was who I was, and there was nothing wrong with that, with being a Capricorn. That's who I was, And then when I started looking at everybody around me, I realized how accurate this was, and how deep this was, and how insightful that was, and how we could not judge other people, because truly we were who we were, and it was more important to understand what we were than to start trying to be something we were not, or trying to compare ourselves with someone else.
That's true. So, that's like the 12 components to a full human, an entire human.
Absolutely. And then I started studying alone under the covers. And at that time, we were living in Switzerland, in Geneva, Switzerland. And my father, who was a journalist, was, got a post in Washington, D.C. So we moved to Washington, D.C., which was heaven for me, because there were all these astrological books everywhere. And I started devouring everything I could put my hands on. And I taught myself how to calculate charts on my own and by hand. There was, I had no computer at the time. And I started doing, the charts of everybody in school. So I created my own little, virtual radio show. After hours, all the kids in school could call me, and I would have their chart, and I would answer their questions, and I would guide them. But of course, this did not make me super popular, because when they were having a party and having fun, nobody invited me, because I just knew too much and I was way too serious. And then, when I was 17, I finished the French school. My parents asked me what I wanted to do, and to me, it was obvious I was going to be an astrologer. I already was an astrologer. And now they're screaming and yelling and telling me this is not a job and this is not possible and I need to get a master's degree, don't care in what. But so I did. I went on and studied, philosophy. By that time, we had returned to Geneva, and I studied the role of archetypes in the meaning of human existence in the works of Carl Gustav Jung, which was really the closest I could find to astrology. And actually, his daughter became an astrologer. And then 4 years later, I got my master's degree, but I was also at that time a full-blown astrologer, and I had clients, I had classes, people had put, rooms at my disposal to give courses, and when I was 21, and what could my parents do? I wasn't strange, I wasn't on drugs, I wasn't weird, I was an astrologer. And I never did anything else. That's my path. That's my passion. That's my vocation. That's what I believe I was born to do. And I'm very grateful to have this amazing, blessed path.
And you did your studies, and by the way, in Carl Jung, and I remember his studies in astrology, if I'm correct, he studied married couples, and he studied their positioning. Didn't he do a study of 250 married couples, and he found that a lot of them had some kind of a specific trine, and maybe you remember what came out of those studies that Carl Jung did. Do you remember those?
No, I don't, but I know that his daughter became an astrologer, a professional astrologer, and he absolutely, it wasn't even a question of believing. People always ask me, what, you believe in that nonsense? No, I don't. I don't believe in astrology. I see it working. You don't need to believe something that you see working over and over and over again. It's not a question of belief. It's reality. It works. It's true.
That's correct. One of the reasons I have a tremendous amount of respect for persons like yourself, and I have an interest in different forms of world astrology, is because it's actually a science. I was a non-believer, having been a psychic, having worked in the industry, and then I was only converted over when I expressed some interest. And I had a person who was very knowledgeable explain to me the mythology, the layouts of the charts, which I'm only still learning now. And then every day she would give me an update. And over our course of our friendship, over about 2 years, I got to know it very intimately. And I found that it was extremely, almost scientifically accurate. And then I thought, well, it's the same with tarot. When you use the tarot, if you know them very well, you do start to learn that they're absolutely 100% reliable. Yet we are familiar with people, with very, one-card spreads or, newspaper spreads or general spreads. And maybe you can explain a little bit about how you work specifically. You wrote a book on quantum astrology, which I find really interesting because I thought that was the idea of molecular astrology seems fascinating. But I also, my colleagues here, I want to ask as well, they're just hankering for the answer. What charts do you use? And by the way, do you still draw them up by hand, or do you use a computer now?
No, I can't. I'm doing too many readings. I would be just doing nothing else but calculations. When you do it by hand, it takes about 8 to 9 hours to actually calculate a chart. And there are so many different charts you can calculate, because a chart, the basic natal chart, which everything is based on the date of birth, full date of birth of a person, time and place in terms of latitude and longitude. And this is a picture of the heavens for the first breath of that person, but it could also be the first breath of an object, of a project, of marriage, of moving into a home. Anything that has a beginning is extremely important. And for example, laying the first brick of a building is extremely important. That's how Greenwich became the major, the first meridian. Greenwich was actually established astrologically. And this is really the GPS for somebody's life. And from there, you can create all sorts of different charts, that are going to give insights into different layers of the person's destiny and path. So, for example, there's a famous solar return that people on their birthday, the sun returns to exactly the same position it was in at birth. And from that time, that date, and that year, and that location, you actually can establish the chart of what is going to happen in that person's life during that coming year, from their birthday to their birthday. And some people actually choose to travel on the day of their birthday in order to shift a little bit their coming year. For example, you can also determine the destiny of countries. Countries also have charts, based on the day of independence, for example, the day when the government changed. And that would be, for example, the time of the winter solstice or the equinoxes. This will, especially the vernal point, so the point of 0 degrees Aries, that is, you would establish a chart for each country, and that will tell you what is going to happen during that year or those next few months in that country.
So for this reading tonight, when did you cast it from where you are right now? Are you in France right now?
I'm in France right now, yes, in Brittany, overlooking the ocean, raging
Mon
ocean.
Dieu, I love Brittany. I went to Mont Saint-Michel as well. And that's so pretty. I'm sure you must have gone there with your name.
It's 2 in the morning here, and it's very dark and it's raining, and it's very wild coast.
Amazing. And those old brick houses, and those women still have those beautiful lace. Do they still do that?
They do, absolutely. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's an amazing tradition. Lovely, lovely. Well, tell us about this chart tonight. So you cast it from Brittany in France. And do tell us, we're curious. We want some fantastic news.
Well, I'll just use the 2014 because I think it's important, since we are just starting this new year, to really understand the whole layout of this year. 2013 was a very dramatic year for many people. It was a year of complete reorganization. So many people, found themselves in extremely difficult situations, whether family situations, whether they lost a job, whether they moved, whether they changed, in their relationships. I mean, there was really a whole regridding, because 2012, the 21st of December 2012 was the end of the Mayan calendar, which didn't actually end on that day, because there are still references to dates in 3,000 years from now, so meaning that they were absolutely aware that this was not the end of the world as some people would have had believed, which was absolutely not true. But it was the end of one cycle. It was the end of one way of living, of the old paradigms. And the mass consciousness that was reached on the 21st of December 2012 in every country, and I'm so blessed to be traveling all over the world, and I'm always amazed that no matter what race, what culture, what even religion, what anything we are, everybody was involved all over the planet in that shift. And in 2013, we could have thought that, now we reached this time of enlightenment, of awareness. Now things are going to be easy. But actually, they became in a way more difficult, because all the darkness came to the surface, which of course darkness is revealed by light. And the more light was happening on the planet, the more people became aware, the more people such as yourself, people who are doing work as you are doing and awakening the masses, well, this brought to the surface all those things that were not. And it brought to the surface all the violence, all the negativity, all the beliefs that were no longer appropriate for our evolution. And it's not so much that there's so much more darkness, but it's much more visible now. and people who were out of integrity, it became very, very clear. And there were separations that were very surprising, and coming together also of people who were very surprising, which were very surprising because, that was a time where people revealed their truth, and sometimes even enemies became friends, and friends became enemies, and family members went in a whole different direction, and people we hadn't seen for decades all of a sudden came back. I mean, there was all this reshifting of everything. And nothing was as it seemed, which was quite extraordinary. And in 2014, we're going to have more of the same. It's not going to be quite as dramatic, but there's still going to be a lot of the letting go of the old paradigms, which means that we're going to have to be even more in our hearts. We're going to have to be even more in our integrity. We're going to discover talents we didn't know we had, or we could all of a sudden have different awareness of our own destiny, of our own life. There could be things we have thought about, and all of a sudden we have the courage to just do it. I was on the plane coming here, and I saw this documentary of this English lady who was in a regular job in England, and I think she was English or Australian, I'm not sure. I think she was English. And anyway, and one day she decided she was just going to give up her job and row across the Atlantic on a little boat on her own. And she's done that now several times. I mean, it's a crazy idea, but somehow she did it. And not only did she survive, but she developed an incredible philosophy of life and peace and happiness. And she was literally glowing as she was talking about her experiences. And stuff like that is happening. People are just giving up, what seems like quote, quote, security, and following their dreams, no matter how crazy they seem, and finding true happiness and true peace and true serenity. And this is what we are meant to do now, that money comes as we follow our bliss. Money comes and abundance comes as we are true to our calling. And it's not a time to just stay in situations just for the sake of security or the sake of, I've always done that. Now is the time to not necessarily risk everything, but do things we want to do. Be real. And this is the magic of 2014. And I feel, because it's also a year that started with a new moon, and this has to do with new beginnings. This has to do with anchoring ourselves into something that is much more magical.
May I ask you what the moon was in when it came in this year?
In the Capricorn. So this is really about everything that has to do with ambition, has to do with our place in society. How do we want to be remembered? How do we want to be seen? Who are we in our, what is our contribution to the wider world? And where are we going from here? What are our long-term goals, and how do we structure ourselves, and what is this wisdom that's inside of us that's asking to emerge outside of us?
You are a Capricorn, and we are going into a year that is of a Capricorn nature. Is that correct? Could you explain to us a little bit about how you would describe yourself? How we could describe the character of this year?
Well, I think this year, first of all, numerologically, this is a 7-year, and 7 numerologic and esoteric numerology is ruled by Neptune. And Neptune is the planet of mysticism, the planet of oneness, the planet also of the oceans, of music, of clairvoyance and enlightenment. So it is truly a year where there could be a lot of dreaming, and yet practical dreaming, because it started with the moon in Capricorn and new moon in Capricorn, which happened on the 1st of January. So it's really a year to co-create. It's really a year to decide what is it that we want. Because we tend to forget that astrology, we always feel that the planets are influencing us, but we forget to think that we also influence the planets. It goes both ways. That everything everyone does affects everybody else, because truly we are all one. And that's what the ocean is all about. So I believe there's going to be also very big concerns about the health of the oceans. There's going to be creative solutions about how to shift the oceans. There's going to be more a sense that we are dreaming our lives, that at night we could feel that our dreams are extremely real. And then when we wake up and we are walking in our daily life, we could feel that we are actually in a dream. And we could start wondering, what is dream and what is reality? Where does it start? Where does it end? And maybe this is all part of the same process. And so maybe also what one thinks affects everybody else, because we're all connected in a dream world, in a dream time. And actually, if you think of it, it's pretty amazing, when one part of the world is asleep, the other part of the world is awake, and vice versa. So we are constantly in this flux of transformation and connectedness.
I like that idea. Yeah, that's very true. So right now, somebody's working our future, our fortunes, and our dream, our logic, our other reality. Right now, as we speak, people are asleep. Well, of course, where you are as well. And so that would be the Neptune
right now.
Yeah. And so what chart did you use when you cast this specifically? And were you able to see anything out of the ordinary? Or is this actually a calmer year? It's a calmer year, isn't it?
It's a year, Neptune is always it's more mystical, it's more ethereal, it's more mysterious. There's always a sense of having to go with the flow in a way. There's a way, it's not a year to push our will and say, this is what I want to do and this is how I want to do it. It's more a year to track things, like shamans do, they track. They just listen, they just feel their way, and they move forward it's not the path of the least resistance, but it's a more flowing way in harmony with everything that is the way it is. So there's really a sense of listening to ourselves, listening to the world. So it could be a year where we do need to be more alone. It's a year where we need to be interactive with others, but we could meet people. We just meet and we feel we've been friends forever. And there could be also times where we just need to be alone in nature. We need to be by the ocean. We need to meditate. We need to be in this space where we can allow our minds to just float freely, and our subconscious is taking more space and more time, and drawing into our lives elements that are of the unknown. So it's a year, I would say, where we need to leave spaces in between. It's not a year to pack ourselves with action. It's not a year to be forceful and dynamic in a way of planning everything out to the second. It's really a year to just allow spaces where we have no idea how they're going to be filled. We don't know what's going to happen during those weeks or those months, but we trust that somehow the picture is going to form itself. Because it's a little, when we were little, we had those sheets with dots and numbers, and we had to connect the dots. I don't know where they went. I don't know if that still exists, but it was such a beautiful thing because you had no idea what you were drawing as you were drawing it. And yet, all of a sudden, the picture would emerge. And that's exactly what's going to happen in 2014, which is a 7 year. we will be just drawing without really knowing what it is that we're drawing, and all of a sudden it will be like, oh my God, this is it. Oh my God, this is exactly what's going on. So we will really understand the deeper, more subtle messages that are underlying certain currents that are happening in a very organic way. And we will be like almost watching the films of our own lives and deriving very deep consciousness of elements that go way beyond what is literally happening. And there is going to be the understanding of the deeper layers of everything else that has led to that, and that is creating this immense picture. So it's an extraordinary year. It's a year of the horse also in Chinese astrology, so that's going to start in February. And that is a year that is usually a year of very dynamic, spontaneous projects. You know, it's a year of enthusiasm. It's a year where people are just happier, where there's really a sense of we are entering a portal of light. There is a sense of things are just, whatever was blocked, whatever we had to shed in 2013, now we can start to open new spaces.
Is this going to be a continuation all the way through until is this something that primes us for the next decade, or is this the calm before the storm?
No, this is actually, we are still in the process, I want to say, of this Uranus square Pluto that started in June of 2012, that's going to end in March of 2015, actually March, April, May 2015, which is the bringing to the surface of everything that is outmoded and everything that was done in corruption, in violence, in lack of integrity. This is going to absolutely explode. So the nice thing is that really we have nothing to do, because whatever is not is going to self-destroy. And it's going to become so obvious to everybody that there is no way we can hide anything, or anybody can hide anything. So, you know, everything that is of the darkness is not giving up without a fight, which means that until 2015, there will still be this sense of, you know, some things coming out of nowhere that seem like very dark and very violent and very negative. But then that's because they're dying. That's because it's not the new energy, the new grid is just not supporting that kind of old paradigm, that kind of old energy. So it's not going to last forever, but the transformation is going to last, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, because there's so much to transform, and in some areas and in some countries, in some cultures more than others. But everything, whether they like it or not, is evolving. Everything, every person, every situation, every government, every institution, everything is evolving. Nothing is untouched by this light that's spreading all over the world.
I like the way you refer to it as light. And we're going to go to a quick commercial right now and then come back to this next point. One moment, please.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at PsychicAccess.com.
Okay.
Hi, Michelle, here we are. And just to continue our conversation, Hi. So you were telling us about the wonderful aspects that we're going to come into a settling point this year, where people are going to be seeing a lot of clarity, and from what I can see, is they're not liking it. Do you think that the people in themselves are going to settle down with the news and the information and everything that they're seeing? You know, the real world. They're waking up. What do you think psychologically they're going to be doing this year? You think it's just going to be about them, about us being able to live with these changes?
Yes, I'm here. I'm back. I'm sorry. I was disconnected.
Oh, no problem. It happens. So were you able to hear me?
Sorry, there's a storm here outside, so I think it's affecting the communication.
I think that's very quaint, and we don't mind that at all. Now, as long as you can hear me, continue on about telling us about how people are adjusting to the new information, the new world, the light that they're seeing. How are they going to handle their new world? Is this a year that they are going to settle?
Well, you know, it's a very difficult question to answer, but it's a very good question. I think some people are going to be very disturbed by this. Some people are going to be very confused by this. Some people are going to just flow with the flow and just soar to heights, amazing heights. Some people may choose to die, you know, may choose to just cross over and continue their lives, you know, in a different form, and not in this physical envelope that they had on this plane, because it's too much for them, you know. And a lot of people, everybody is taking their role, and even those people who are crossing over. And my own sister actually died a year and a half ago just at the end of 2012, actually, in a hang gliding accident. But the communications I've had with her since she died is that she really has awakened on the other side, and she has been able to do an amount of work that she was not able to do in a physical body while she was in the consciousness she was in. So, and some of these people who are also leaving the planet are leaving the planet with taking with them a very old karma that we don't need anymore. It's really a time when we need to reinvent ourselves, and we need to not hold on to the old guilt, to the old fears, to the old difficulties that we've been dragging along. Now is a time of first of all, synchronicities, amazing encounters, there's amazing, miracles are happening if we start to focus our minds in the right place and really be focused, you know, connected to our hearts in the right way. Amazing things can happen that seemed absolutely impossible and yet are happening. And how many times have we thought of something and within a few minutes it was appearing around us? So we're starting to really understand the powers of our mind, the powers, our divine powers. We're really becoming human dolphins. We are really becoming masters. And masters can only be masters if they are in absolute integrity, and being in integrity means being absolutely honest with oneself. So we cannot, you know, we have to walk our talk. We cannot have our left hand not know what our right hand is doing. Everything has to be in alignment. And for some people who may have been quite out of alignment or even a little out of alignment, it's going to become very obvious where they are. And we're going to have to rectify that. There's just there's going to be no choice. It's going to be obvious. It's going to be unbearable, actually, not to be in alignment.
That's true. And when I think of the word alignment, and that is of the Uranus quality, which is an independent thought. Is that correct? Because we have a lot of Uranus.
Well, this squares are a 90-degree angle between two planets, and this is always a challenge. It's never an easy, flowing, nice, you know, harmonious, serene transition. It's always through difficulty, through effort, through a sense of, having to put our energy into creating the transformation. And Uranus, to me, is lightning striking. It is this force that shows us, light's darkness in a blinding light. And then darkness comes back and we have to find our way into the darkness. And Pluto is this energy of the lava, the volcano that's been underground and that has all these very unconscious, these very deep, rich, but very dark forces involved in it and emerges to the surface. So we're really in crossfires right now. I mean,
you
we
count
have
Pluto in your
things
chart.
from the inside emerging, these shadows coming out, and then we have these major insights and major breakthroughs and major enlightenment, and it's all happening at once. So I think that's also explaining the very extreme, temperatures and climates and weather we've had, and those, those very major destructions that even nature has been creating in certain countries, on certain islands, like in the Philippines, like now the island of Reunion Island in the, south of Africa, which is completely devastated by 200-mile winds and dramatic, rains. I mean, this is all part of this cleansing. This is all part also of Mother Earth saying enough, enough. Now is the time. Either we move forward and we become of the light and we free ourselves from the old bondages, or we cannot be here anymore. It's not possible. The new energy does not support these lies and these darknesses and this stagnant energy. It's just not possible.
How long is this transit going to last in terms of the darkness coming to light?
Well, really until between March and May of 2015. So we still have a year of this, but it's not, I believe, going to be as dramatic as 2013, because in 2013 we were shocked. It was like when you land in a new country and you have to learn everything, you have to figure out everything. After a while, you start to know the ropes, and now we have figured out some of the ropes in 2013. So we still are not out of the woods. We still have personal work to do and collective work to do, but at least, I would say the worst is behind us already. There will still be some major adjustments in 2014, and by May 2015, it's going to be really cleared. The decks are going to be cleared. But so it's not a time to say, oh, well, we have arrived and let's just rest on our laurels. This is a time to be extremely vigilant. This is a time to be extremely, not fearful, but aware. And not, in expectation of anything bad happening, but in the awareness that we have to be very present to the present, and we have to deal with things as they emerge and take them extremely seriously. This is a time we cannot afford not to do our personal work. We just cannot.
That's correct. So in terms of this, is this a good year for working together as teams in terms of people?
Absolutely.
Are they?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. This is a year where we're going to attract some very like-spirited people who are going to come out of nowhere, literally, and who are going to support us in creating what we have to do. And the more, we accept that this is not a time to work on our own. This is a time to collaborate and, put all our skills together to create shifts much faster. So this is not a year of jealousy. This is not a year of I'm better than you. This is a year of understanding, hey, we're all in this together. Let's get out of this together. Let's pool our forces and our resources together to create a better world. And we're going to find amazing solidarities, sometimes with the least expected people, and people maybe we haven't heard from in forever, or people we didn't necessarily consider as our best friends, and all of a sudden they will turn out to be the ones who roll up their sleeves and just do the work with us. And it's going to be like, whoa, where did this come from? But it's working. It's absolutely working, and
that leads us onto the question of money. So how is, the main thing to only get things started? You have to have a functioning economy. How does what house does money fall into? I'm sorry, I don't know. That's an astrologer. And how is that looking? How are the planets in that particular house?
Actually, usually the second house and the eighth house are the houses of money. But the amazing thing this year is that money is going to manifest as we need it. So that should not be our primary concern. Our concern should be to be in integrity and to be in our hearts. And as we are in our hearts and we are in integrity, then the rest will flow from that, and finances are actually going to be manifested or will come out of in the weirdest ways. All of a sudden we'll receive what we need. So we need to absolutely have trust this year. We need to absolutely know what we know, and to know that we are supported. Even if we feel alone at some time, we are not going to be remaining alone. Things are going to start transforming very, very fast.
Yeah, what we saw here in this we're getting used to catastrophes here. We're starting to organize as to how to handle them better. And what is very sad to see is people that are, that have absolutely no work, may never have work again, and no one to trust. And what can you say to those people for next year?
Well,
good intentions and all will not feed them.
But I don't agree with that, Carmen, because I'm actually in the hotel right now of some friends who are losing their hotel, and they're going to have no home and no work within a week. But the truth is, I know that because of all the work they have done on themselves and what they have created here, it looks dramatic, the situation looks dramatic, but it's for something way better. And actually their true dream is to return to their place of birth and to be with their family. And I know that it's the universe, giving them a little kick in the butt and saying, hey, just live your dream, go for it. Because if they hadn't had this happen to them, they would have stayed here, which is not necessarily their highest dream. So, people, we think we're alone. We're never alone. There's always people around us. We always have a gift. Everybody has a gift. And, the person who created Kentucky Fried Chicken, all he had was a fried chicken recipe and his little social security paycheck that was not going to allow him to survive in any way. And now he created this incredible multi-million business that maybe is, questionable from a health point of view, but hey, it's possible. Everybody has a talent. Everybody has something that they have inside of them, a spark of light. And from there, if you start to focus on that spark of light, you will find friends. If you start to say yes to life, if you start to open yourself to what is right around you, and you start to shift your attitude, because it's really about shifting our awareness of ourselves and stop feeling like victims and stop feeling like poor little me, I'm alone and I can't do that and I don't have the money. You know what? If you look at Steve Jobs, the guy started with no money in his garage. He just had an idea. And that idea has inspired millions of people around the world and has helped the work of millions of people around the world. So there is nothing small in what is in our hearts, and everybody has that with no exception. But it's a matter of looking at it and believing in ourselves.
No, I know that's a very, very good thing to remember. And do you, I have my question here as well for you here. One of our colleagues asking here, is this a progression chart that you do, or what do you do specifically for yourself?
No, I do a combination of charts. I never do only one chart. I always base it on the natal chart. Then I look at the secondary progressions. I look at the transits. I look at the harmonics. I look at the solar return, and I do a sort of combination of all those charts together. And that's my, approach to it. I also look into numerology. So that's why I really feel that it's important, especially now that we're becoming so much broader. It used to be that we had just one phone and one address. Now we have we can be reached by Skype, by Facebook, by Viber, by fax, there's so many ways now of reaching people, by email, by regular letters, and that's exactly, or look, before it was we had coffee either with sugar or cream. Now we have Starbucks, and I don't think anybody has exhausted all the potential of Starbucks. And we are becoming multidimensional beings, and because of that, astrology, which reflects our lives, should be also of that nature. So that's why I always use a combination of charts which I synthesize, and that's how I navigate my readings.
We have 5 minutes left in the interview. I wanted to ask you about your book on you wrote a book on quantum astrology. Tell us a little about that and your new book. Please tell us a bit about what you are writing.
Well, actually, the one you're mentioning is the one I'm writing. So, but the one I wrote is Astrology for Enlightenment, which was published by Simon & Schuster, which is actually a redefinition of astrology based on the observation of nature. And I don't believe that we are just one sign. I believe we are all the signs and all the planets. And in my book, I explain how each sign can be empowered by all the other 11 signs, and how we can start looking and learning astrology in the way it was intended to be learned, by observing things around us. So there's whole lists of colors and objects and archetypes and animals and countries and cities and metals and plants and everything that are associated with each sign and each planet. And when we start to look at those signatures, we can start learning ourselves the richness and the depth of astrology and come up with our own interpretations.
And so this is going to be available on your website, Michelle. I wanted to give this as well. We're going to give this out at the end of the show. But considering, your brightness, which is so needed in our world right now, what would you want for us? Your main wish, if you were to run, our future, what would be your main observation for us humans?
Enlightenment. I believe the only way out of this situation is enlightenment. And I think our task as human beings is to reach this state of transparency, this state of absolute unconditional love and absolute faith in ourselves, belief in who we are, and knowledge that we each are an expression of the divine, and we are the divine. And once we're able to do that, imagine, that's why the Mayan calendar ended, not because it's the end of the world, but because there is no telling what millions of masters are going to create on this earth. And all the prophecies of the earth talk about this golden age that we're entering into. And it's a time of enlightenment, it's a time of joy, the time of peace, a time of knowing who we are, remembering our truth, our divine truth, and experiencing it and manifesting it into the world.
It's amazing how we have been almost brainwashed to think that it does not exist. I believe it exists. It exists very much in you, Michelle. I think that we should, turn off our TVs and, tune out from all this terror out there, and remember that the spirit and the souls in us will prevail. They always have, no matter what the odds are.
Absolutely.
And I wish your friends the best. I'm sure they will, under your guidance, do very well. Michelle, it was so very, very wonderful meeting you. And I would love to have you, come to speak to me at some point, if you like, if you ever wish to have any guidance as well. And You're a brilliant writer. You always have some amazing seminars happening. For you that don't know the other side with Michelle, she's also a shamanism practitioner and teacher, and she often travels to South America to give courses in shamanism. And it's something that maybe we could have you back on another show to discuss, Michelle, if you'd be happy to.
I would be absolutely honored and delighted, Carmen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and bonne nuit, and have a very, very bon rêve tonight. And we'll see you in the astral somewhere when you cross back over into North America. And
Thank you
I'll
very
be
much.
there on Eastern Standard Time, okay?
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Carmen. Bye-bye. Good night.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 60-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers, get access, psychic access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.
Did you study under her as well?
No, I did not, but I did read her book when I was 14, and this made me want to become an astrologer. And I mean, to this day, I still believe she's the greatest teacher I ever had, even though I never met her personally. But I believe in spirit we were extremely connected. And she was a genius in that she was able to explain very deep, esoteric, ancient wisdom, astrological wisdom, in a way that was very accessible to popular understanding. So it's at the same time her books were very poetic, very deep, very rich, very real, and at the same time very simple to understand. So, of course, when I read this when I was 14 and I told my parents I was going to be an astrologer, they're like, what? What is she talking about? How old is she? And but I was determined, so I started, I read all the books, because what was amazing about Linda Goodman's sun signs is that somebody who had never met me could describe me better than people who lived with me. And then I realized that whatever, people said was so wrong with me was actually just my sign, was my reality, was who I was. And after hours, all the kids in school could call me, and I would have their chat, and I would answer their questions, and I would guide them. But of course, this did not make me super popular, because when they were having a party and having fun, nobody invited me because I just knew too much and I was way too serious. And then, when I was 17, I finished the French school. My parents asked me what I wanted to do, and to me it was obvious I was going to be an astrologer. I already was an astrologer. And now they're screaming and yelling and telling me this is not a job and this is not possible and I need to get a master's degree, don't care in what. But so I did. I went on and studied, philosophy. By that time we had returned to Geneva. And I studied the role of archetypes in the meaning of human existence in the works of Carl Gustav Jung, which was really the closest I could find to astrology. And actually his daughter became an astrologer. And then 4 years later, I got my master's degree, but I was also at that time a full-blown astrologer. And I had clients, I had classes, people had put rooms at my disposal to give courses, and when I was 21.
Michelle Karén, she is an astrologer, author, and shamanism teacher who's highly regarded for her mastery in the international community, for her ability to pierce through the most challenging situations with her insight. Visit her at www.michellekarén.com. You can review her books, her travels, her essays, and her presentations. Michelle is the author of Astrology for Enlightenment. And so without much of more of a wait, let's say hello to Michelle. Hello.
Hello, Carmen. How are you doing?
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for meeting us.
Happy
How are you
New
tonight?
Year
Happy New
to
Year.
everybody. Let's co-create a year of peace, happiness, joy, love, abundance, and everything we desire this year.
I think so. And so, what you are, I'd like to find out from you. For one, you have a beautiful, beautiful voice.
Thank
I must
you.
imagine that you probably use that in your work to do your meditations, your singing for your shamanism instruction, and you just have an amazing presence, a very calm energy. You've
Thank
written
you.
several books. Tell us a little bit about your background because now I believe, is this correct that not only inspired by Linda Goodman, as we all were, I mean, absolute
She was
staple.
amazing. There was nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that, with being a Capricorn. That's who I was, you know. And then when I started looking at everybody around me, I realized how accurate this was and how deep this was and how insightful that was and how we could not judge other people because truly we were who we were, and it was more important to understand what we were than to start trying to be something we were not, or trying to compare ourselves with someone else.
That's true. That's
So
like the 12 components to a full human, an entire human.
absolutely. And then I started studying alone under the covers. And at that time, we were living in Switzerland, in Geneva, Switzerland. And my father, who was a journalist, was, got a post in Washington, D.C. So we moved to Washington, D.C., which was heaven for me because there were all these astrological books everywhere. And I started devouring everything I could put my hands on. And I taught myself how to calculate charts on my own and by hand. There was, I had no computer
Oh,
at the
wow.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
And I started doing, the charts of everybody in school. So I created my own little, virtual radio show. And what could my parents do? I wasn't strange. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't weird. I was an astrologer. And I never did anything else. That's my path. That's my passion. That's my vocation. That's what I believe I was born to do. And I'm very grateful to have this amazing, blessed path.
And you did your studies, and by the way, in Carl Jung, and I remember his studies in astrology, if I'm correct, he studied married couples and he studied the
Absolutely.
positioning. Didn't he do a study of 250 married couples, and he found that a lot of them had some kind of a specific trine, and maybe you remember what came out of those studies that Carl Jung did. Do you remember those?
No, I don't, but I know that his daughter became an astrologer, a professional astrologer, and he absolutely, it wasn't even a question of believing. People always ask me, what, you believe in that nonsense? No, I don't. I don't believe in astrology. I see it working. You don't need to believe something that you see working over and over and over again. It's not a question of belief, it's reality. It works. It's true.
That's correct. One of the reasons I have a tremendous amount of respect for persons like yourself, and I have an interest in different forms of world